Good morning, everybody. We are really excited to get started today. We are kicking off here our HR Hangout 2024, our webinar 1 of 12. So we are excited to be here and we're looking forward to presenting. My name is Katie Spadoro and I am the founder of CYB Human Resources. I started the company in 2015 and we've been building small businesses along the way. So let's get started. I am a risk mitigation expert. We specialize in small businesses specifically. We found there was a really big gap between the small businesses and the bigger businesses and being able to comply with all of the HR compliance laws that have come across. So what we really want to do here is go through each of those. We have some thresholds, basic thresholds that it's really important everyone is aware of up front. And then we are going to dig into each of the different laws as we continue to go through there. And this Rachel, my lead HR generalist, is here. I would like for her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us all today. So my name is Rachel Patch. I'm the Senior HR Generalist here at CYB Human Resources. I've been the head HR Generalist for about 3 years at the company. I previously worked in HR for nonprofits before joining the CYB team. I am an HR compliance expert, and I specialize in building HR for small businesses, especially with a mindset towards overall growth. And yeah, just thank you all so much for joining us while we go through 2024 changes.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All righty, getting started. So as I mentioned, we were founded in 2015. We're a full service outsourced HR firm. We specialize and partner with small businesses. We want to align your policies with updated federal standards. We provide training, employee compliance, all of that fun stuff that is required, obviously, as a small business. The major gap, like I mentioned, was that business owners were either Googling and hoping for the best, or they were making a mistake and then calling their attorney afterwards to try to fix that mistake. So being proactive in HR is key. So that is something that as we provide this support to small businesses, we are being very proactive with what they are doing and how they are managing everything. Industry agnostic. So we work across companies, across the board, all industries for the most part. Restaurants, cannabis, energy, construction, any industry essentially that has employees. If you have an employee, we are able to assist you with next steps, hiring, firing, all that fun stuff. Again, remember, it's easier and more cost effective to do it right the first time than it is to try to go back and undo something that you've been doing previously. So hire the experts. Our goal is always to hire the experts. I obviously own my own business. I've gone through ups and downs through that process, but it's been a learning experience here for me as well. And now I can confidently say that it's really important for you to hire experts as well. And we'd like the goal here to build out CYB Human Resources was creating a life-work balance for human resources professionals. When I first started the company, that was not really an option available. There was no part-time HR. There was no ability to work from home. And that was something really important. I wanted individuals to have the opportunity to travel and to have a family, and building CYB Human Resources was the solution to that. We have a question and answer at the end. So any questions that you have, feel free to add into the comment box, and we will be addressing those, as many as we possibly can, towards the end of this presentation. So feel free to add them in. You can add them in all at the end or just start adding them right now. All right, so the introduction, this is an outline of what we're going to review here. Ensuring adherence to all of these new regulations is crucial to maintaining a healthy, fair, and compliant environment for all employees. We are here to help you do that. Some key federal compliance updates to be aware of in 2024 are the hiring updates, policy updates, benefit updates, and employment poster updates. First, we are going to do a brief review of private sector federal headcount thresholds and hit on a lot of the laws that are in each of those sections. So you are aware of when you have one employee, what that means, and so on. Okay, so up front, all private sector employees. Now, don't go to sleep. I know this is just thrilling. However, these are all really important for you to at least be aware of and understand what they mean. So the Consumer Credit Protection Act, the CCPA, protects employees from discharge due to wages being garnished for any debt, and it limits the amount that you are able to pull out of that check. The ERISA, so Employment Retirement Income Security Act. Minimum standards for employee benefit plans. So if you have a benefit plan in place, it's really important that you are aware that this law applies to you. The Equal Pay Act, exactly how it stands. Obviously, equal pay for equal work. It's really important. So providing equal compensation across the board to men and women who perform equal work in the same workplace. This is a big one. This is one that we see sometimes. We see this sometimes in severance agreements. Sometimes there are people being laid off and they have a different amount available to them as a severance. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. So it's really important across the board. You're working with an HR expert to help build out, for example, severance agreements, job descriptions, salary analysis. All of those fun things are important. The FACT, so the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions, promoting accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumer information on credit reports. So if you are running credit reports, it's really important that you're doing it, again, equally across the board for the same position. You also need to have a requirement, a legal requirement as to why you are running their credit. You can't necessarily just go run your secretary's credit if they have no reason to be involved in any sort of accounting or money or finance. These are typically permitted for, accounting positions for anyone who is holding a key or has access to your financial statements, your bank accounts, your credit cards, all of those things. But again, it needs to be documented on your job descriptions, and it needs to be documented on an SOP, a standard operating procedure on the back end, to be sure that you are doing it across the board the same way. Fair Credit Reporting Act. So credit reporting, federal law designed to regulate collection, dissemination, and use of consumer credit information. Keep everything private, keep everything locked up, make sure that it is password protected, that it is under, there's obviously a lot of cyber security issues going on currently, and they have been for the past few years. It's really important that all of your files are locked up tight, and having, cybersecurity insurance in place is something that's really important. We recommend that to clients across the board. Fair Labor Standards Act. This is a very basic one. This one establishes minimum wage. So obviously there's a federal minimum wage and a state minimum wage. There's also local minimum wages. It's important that as a business, you are aware of all of the options, everything that's going on, and that you are complying with the one that works for you, and that's required for you. So a local city minimum wage would trump a federal minimum wage. So if you live somewhere that the local minimum wage is $18 an hour and the federal minimum wage is $7.25, it's important that you are complying with that state regulation or that local regulation, the higher number. FICA, so U.S. law that mandates collection of Social Security and Medicare taxes from employees. Obviously, that is pulled directly out of your payroll. We highly, highly recommend that that money is pulled out of the payroll and that you are utilizing an outsourced payroll service. The fines that can potentially come along with improperly deducting anything from your employee's check are very high. So we highly recommend do not take on that liability as a small business. There are a ton of affordable options for payroll that you can utilize online, and get that liability off of your chest and off of your back. It's not worth it to have to face all of those issues if they come down the line. HIPAA, so Health Insurance and Probability and Accountability Act. This law is designed to protect individuals' privacy and security of their health information, establish national standards for electronic healthcare transactions. Something here is when you are, you have an employee folder with their benefits in it and their health insurance information and any drug tests that you are giving to your employees. Make sure that is separate. Something that we used to do, and in my experience, having a main folder with the employees' basic information that you're able to share with managers and things like that, but also having a separate folder that includes anything having to do with their healthcare. So healthcare, again, drug test results, drug test requirements, things like that. We definitely recommend those are in a separate folder, so they're never given to the wrong person or end up in the wrong hands. Immigration Reform and Control Act. So employers are prohibited from hiring and retaining employees that are not authorized to be working in the United States. So the Form I-9 here is really, really important. Every employee needs to have a Form I-9. It needs to be completed within 3 days of the employee's first day. You can complete it before they start, but the latest it can be completed is 3 days after their first day of work. A Form I-9 is a two-part process. So I speak to a lot of business owners who say that, yes, we gave out the Form I-9, they have it. You also have to do something. So it's not just giving the form out and saying it's done. It's really important that you get that back and you are verifying, or somebody on your team is verifying that Form I-9 within those first 3 days. There's also a ton of other little laws regarding the color of the ink that you can use and crossing out and things like that. So this is a very expensive fine. However, it's easy to avoid if you know what you're doing. So the Form I-9 is one of those that it's easy to prevent a problem. You just need to know what the proper steps to take are. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. U.S. federal law extends the time frame for filing pay discrimination claims. This allows individuals to challenge unequal pay based on gender or other reasons that may have occurred. Mental Health and Equality Act. This is for group health insurance plans. Legislation aimed at ensuring that health insurance coverage for mental health and substance abuse disorder services is on par with coverage for other medical and surgical services. Something that we highly recommend here is having an EAP in place, so an employment assistance program or an employee assistance program. What that does is that provides your employees with access to an 800 number if they are struggling with any sort of issues at home, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, things like that. It can be a delicate issue to discuss those with an employee as a business owner. So it's a much more simplified process. You can set these up through your insurance company. It's typically very inexpensive to have this in place, and it can save you a lot of time and money down the line. The NLRA, so the National Labor Relations Act. The NLRA is a federal law that protects the rights of employees to engage in collective bargaining, form, or join a labor union. Obviously, this is not ideal, but these are things that are in place because it's really important to have an option for an employee if something is not being done properly and they have nowhere to go. This is a great example of something that the Human Resources HR hotline that CYB Human Resources offers can help mitigate these issues because it allows employees to voice their opinion and speak to someone prior to unionizing or anything like that. The OSHA, so Occupational Safety and Health Act, federal law that sets standards for safety requirements within your company, health standards, things like that. And this is something, again, all private sector employees are required to be following this law. The Jury System Improvement Act, prohibiting employers from discharging or taking certain actions against the employee summoned to serve as a juror in federal court. So obviously, we highly recommend having a policy that includes jury duty in your handbook, making sure that it is compliant with the requirements of not only the federal law, but any state or local ordinances that are different or may be different than the federal law. So allowing employees obviously out to serve in the jury. OSHA hazard and communication standard, mandating employers communicate information about hazardous chemicals to their employees through labeling, safety sheets, training, all those fun things that you need to have in place. SOX, so Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and this is enacted in response to corporate financial scandals. It aims to enhance transparency and accountability for small businesses in financial reporting. So this is something just to be aware of that it exists. And USERRA, so the Uniformed Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act. It prohibits employers from discriminating against individuals on the basis of membership of a uniformed service, which obviously we highly respect, with regard to any aspect of employment at all. Okay, 11 plus employees. So OSHA applies to all size companies. However, once you hit 11 employees, there is a systematic documentation and maintenance of these injuries and illnesses that you must be doing. You must be tracking anything that occurs at the company. There's a sheet that's available for you to do this on, and it's something that we help clients do regularly. It's just important to track these and have these documented for yourself. And if you are ever questioned, you have that in place. 15 plus employees, the ADA, America with Disabilities Act, federal law prohibiting disability discrimination and requiring reasonable accommodations for equal employment, equal opportunities employment. This is something that think of the ability to access your building. Is there a way for someone in a wheelchair to access your building? If not, that could potentially be a major problem. Allowing obviously employees with all of different disabilities coming into your office is really important, and that would be something that could be an issue moving forward. So that's just a heads up. GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. I know there's lots of letters. Federal law that prohibits employers from discriminating against employees based on genetic information and resists the acquisition and disclosure of genetic information. For example, it is illegal. This is a great example. It's illegal for an employer to transfer an employee to a different job because they apparently found out about a heart condition in the family, and they feel that it might be too stressful for this employee due to their grandfather having a heart condition. That's an example of using this type of information inappropriately. Pregnancy Discrimination Act, federal law prohibiting employers from discriminating against employees on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, anything in regards to pregnancy at all, making sure that you are providing equal rights for someone who's pregnant versus someone who is not. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Title VII is the major overarching law, and it obviously is important for us to be aware of the fact that discrimination is not okay. Anything having to do with that with an employee, we want to provide a safe and healthy work environment for all employees as you continue to grow your business. 20+ Age Discrimination in Employment Act, federal law prohibiting age-based discrimination against employees aged 40 or over, and obviously applies to employers with 20 or plus employees. It's important here when you are hiring and firing employees that you keep this in mind, and keep in mind that this is a major process that we go through when we are hiring and firing an employee. Is this something that they qualify for? Is this something they fall under? If so, we really need to double check what we're doing and make sure that you have the proper documentation to be terminating an employee at any age, obviously, but specifically over the age of 39. It's really important to be aware of that. COBRA, federal law that allows employees and their dependents to continue group health insurance. It differs whether you are in a states, federal, local, all of these differ depending on where you live, where you're working. There are states that require things like mini COBRA. So this is something that we review for clients and have a documented process in place when a client is leaving, when an employee is leaving. So having a exit interview process, having a packet that you're providing to this team member when they're leaving, making sure that every document is in place. There are some states that require 15 different documents that you need to provide to somebody when you are terminating them. So making sure you have a checklist for yourself and that you have something there to remind you what needs to be done step by step. 50 employees, the EEOC form. So EEO1 form is what it is called. And it's workforce data categorized by race, ethnicity, gender, job category, which monitors and enforces equal employment opportunity laws. So this is a form that you need to complete and you need to hand in. FMLA, this is a big one. Family Medical Leave Act, federal law allowing eligible employees unpaid job protected leave for a family or medical reason. The reason why this is so important is it's 12 weeks, it's unpaid, it's across the board once you have 50 employees. It's really important that the managers on your team are trained on FMLA. The reason being, it's the employer's responsibility to alert an employee if they may be eligible for FMLA. If you overhear an employee talking about they are pregnant or they really have a sick parent that they're needing to go take care of, as a manager at a company, you are required by law to let that employee know that they may be eligible for FMLA, and then you need to send that individual to HR to review the process. It's a process, it's step by step, things like that. Not stepping in as a manager in that situation could result in, I've seen back pay for a year, I've seen fines, I've seen all types of things. So it's really, again, easy to prevent and do it the right way, but management training on these laws is really, really important. FMLA being a major one, because back pay for a year is not fun for anybody. 100+ employees warned. So what this is federal law requiring employers to provide advance notice of mass layoffs and plant closures, and ensuring they have time, obviously, to get another job throughout that process. Okay. I am going to pass this over here to Rachel, and she is going to start on the updates for private sector private sector federal updates. Rachel, go for it.
Fabulous. So before we get into the fun part for 2024, I did want to do a quick update for 2023, make sure everyone is up to date on those federal changes. So just starting off for federal contractors. So if you have a contract with the federal government or you have employees with prevailing wages, then it's time to review their wage information while they're working on that project for the federal government. Make sure that the minimum wage that they're receiving matches what is required by the federal government. Another big change with religious accommodations. So the Supreme Court did make a ruling last year in 2023 impacting how we review religious accommodations. So before, the way we were looking at these accommodations to see if they are an undue hardship was to determine if the cost of the business was going to be more than trivial. Going forward, when you're reviewing any accommodation request for a religious reason, you need to determine if it is a substantial change and increased cost to the business. So consider the practical impact of that accommodation relative to the nature of the business, size, the operational costs. Long story short, it's going to be more difficult to deny religious accommodations based on that change from the Supreme Court. And then, Katie, I'm ready for the next slide. Fabulous. Okay, and then just a couple annual reminders. So these are going to come up every year. So make sure to put those on your calendar. They're fun ones. If you are a business that requires OSHA reporting, then it's just about that time of year where we're requiring the electronic submission of forms 300 and 301. You may also be required to submit the form 300A depending on your company's size. So that needs to be submitted electronically going forward to OSHA, and the filing requirement there is coming up on March 2nd of this year. And then the other annual reminder is new standard mileage rates have been published for 2024. These will be updated throughout the year, so don't expect these to stay the same, but for now, for any employee who is driving a personal vehicle on company business, the standard mileage reimbursement rate is 67 cents per mile. And then again, check that later in the year because that number will update as gas prices fluctuate. And then I'll go ahead and pass it back to Katie for 2024 updates so she can welcome us into that section.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rachel. Hiring. Okay. So obviously hiring in a small business is not easy. It's super important that you follow all of the laws when you're hiring a new employee. What I like to say is hire slow and fire quick, but not too quick. The reason I'm saying this is because once you have an employee, you have an employee. There are things like, waiting periods or probationary periods or things like that. But the reality is that legally, those don't necessarily mean anything. The employee is an employee from day one. Those different types of waiting periods are important when it comes to, you can utilize those for PTO. You can utilize those for the health insurance where it's required to kick in, things like that. But it costs a lot to make a wrong choice. Again, you're taking time out of your day. Your team is taking time to interview individuals, train them, things like that. So it does cost a lot more to make the wrong choice throughout this process. One employee who is not a fit can disrupt your entire team. Make sure that you're building a culture that you love. And since you're building this culture that you love, bringing in one person that is not the right fit could cause a major problem for other employees. So making sure you're doing reference checks, making sure you're running background screens, things like that are really important, not only from a liability standpoint, but because you are building a company that you really want to make sure stands out and that is healthy and happy and everyone wants to come to work for you. Once you hire them, again, it can take a ton of time and money to terminate an employee and not keeping a bad hire around for too long. So if somebody is not doing what they are supposed to be doing in job A, moving them to job B is not recommended at all. So if they're unable to do their job A, they're coming to work late, they are causing disruption within the department, things like that. Moving them to the second job doesn't mean they're going to start coming to work on time. So making sure that if that person is not doing their job, you are aware of it, you are documenting it. A second part of that is within the time that you are deciding whether this employee is a good fit or not, maybe we'll give them another chance, things like that. If that employee makes any sort of complaint in that period, it could be seen as retaliation when you do decide to terminate the employee. So obviously having documentation and things like that is really, really important here. So they are aware, everybody on the team is aware that this employee is not performing as you want them to be performing. Having in place when you're hiring a customized employee handbook that you are utilizing. An employee handbook does not work if you have it in your cabinet and no employees have signed it and it hasn't been updated since 2001. So making sure that it is updated for 2024, very important. Making sure that your managers are aware of any changes that occurred. The employees must be aware, and all employees have to have signed the handbook. Again, it does not matter if you have a handbook that nobody has signed and nobody's aware of. It should be used as a tool for coaching and management. A new hire packet, making sure it includes all forms that are required, including the I-9, that's a major one. A hiring SOP, so having a standard operating procedure for how you are hiring an employee is very, very important across the board, making sure that the interview process is compliant and legal, that you're asking legal questions, making sure that all managers are asking the same questions for the same job. Again, very important. Onboarding process, you have one chance to make a first impression. So making sure that that employee enjoys their time and has a good first day is really important. Telling them, having them potentially, doing a tour of some sort, or lunch with the CEO, or lunch with their team, or even a little note pre-written from the CEO is a welcoming experience for that employee. And obviously having some sort of termination SOP in place as well, making sure that if there is a problem that occurs, that you have the next steps as to what to do with that employee. Okay, Rachel.
Okay, fabulous. So let's go ahead and jump into the 2024 updates. So you'll notice up in the corner there, it does say 2023. I did want to make sure that we absolutely could highlight this change. It did come about mid-2023, but it is super important going into 2024. If you haven't already, I think this is a great time to update your process. So the Form I-9, which Katie has touched on earlier, has been updated as of mid last year. And so going forward, you will need to use this new form. If you're not sure if you have the old one or the new one, up in the top corner, it'll say either expired 2022 or expired 2026. If it expires in 2026, you have the right form. If not, the form is available online. Please make sure you update your process with that. So changes coming to the form. In terms of completing the form, very little is changing for your in-person employees. The section for returning employees who are coming back to business, that has been moved to a separate page. Sections 1 and 2 remain the same. So section 1 is still completed by the employee, and section 2 is still completed by you or an authorized representative, and is completed by the employer with the employee. Making sure that you've got the most updated version, and update your documents if you haven't already. Katie, go ahead, next slide. Okay, the other exciting I-9 change, I know a little bit of a oxymoron there. So the I-9 form, we now have a remote verification option. So if you are a company that is 100% remote, your employees are remote, then this is an option for you. Unfortunately, if you have any employees who are still in person, this is not an option for your business. So for remote only employers going forward, if you would like to complete the I-9 entirely virtually without having to visually inspect anyone's documents, then you are still going to need to inspect documents virtually. You can do that over a Zoom or any other web call. Keep a copy of those documents, have your employees share a photo of what those documents look like. Go ahead and complete the I-9 form as you would normally. And then the next step there is you'll need to complete the e-verify process for that employee if you are choosing to verify them remotely. So important to note here is you have to have an e-verify account that's set up, ready to go. There is a little bit of a process to learn the ins and outs of e-verify before you can start submitting cases. So you do need to have that set up before your first hire where you're hoping to go through this process. So if you're seeing some potential remote hires coming down the pipeline, it's probably time to get an e-verify account if you don't already. All right, next slide. Okay, I know we've touched on the Fair Credit Reporting Act. There have been some updates and changes from 2023 that are going into effect in 2024. So for any employees or candidates who you are running a pre-employment credit check on, the standards there have changed a little bit. So I will note, again, only some positions are eligible for a credit check. There are some rules and some boxes that have to be checked off to make sure that that position is eligible for that check. So I do recommend that you talk with your HR team or your legal team before implementing this as a pre-employment check for folks. If it is legal, it is appropriate for this position, and you end up denying an applicant for the position based on their credit report, then you will need to provide them with the reporting agency's details so that they can get a copy of that credit report and contest any false information on that document. All right, next slide. Okay, so overall for hiring updates in 2024, what does this mean for you? Review your I-9 process, make sure you've got the correct document, see if the remote verification is right for you and you're eligible for that at your company. If you're conducting credit checks for hiring any financial related roles, then make sure you update your process for denying a candidate based on that check. Also a good time to go back and see what your standards are in terms of the, what number is required on that credit check in order to bring someone into that position. And then if you're considering adding credit checks for any positions, then that's definitely something we can help with if you're thinking of moving that forward. And then I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Katie, to talk about policy next.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ms. Rachel. Okay, so policy updates are important, and policy updates are important to avoid a lawsuit, making sure that the policy that you are running your business by is up to date. Again, having a handbook and a policy from 15 years ago, even 3 years ago, there's been major changes since that time. So it's really important to make sure those are updated and that your employees are aware of them. Again, I cannot state often enough how important it is that your employees have signed your handbook. If you do not have an employee that has signed the handbook, it doesn't exist. So you don't have a handbook. So making sure that's updated, and also, making sure that you're not locking yourself in as a business owner to a policy that is either not compliant or something that you don't feel comfortable complying with yourself. So if it's a PTO policy or a holiday policy, something you can essentially build out on your own, just make sure it's updated and that it's something that you agree with as the owner and as the management team, because once it's in that handbook, it's there. So you can send updates as needed, but think through the process of building that handbook and make sure that it is something that you feel comfortable with as a business owner. Okay, let me see. One of the things that, come across our board, you may think that you're too small to have these things in place. You are never too small to have a handbook in place. Companies that have had 3, 4 employees have come to us in the past, and the reason being is they have high turnover. So hiring and firing an employee over and over, or hiring and firing employees over and over, could cause issues. It's important that you have documented processes there to standardize and make sure that you have a reason for hiring and firing these employees so often. That's a great example. Perfect. Rachel, I'm going to hand you over the policy updates for 2024.
Fabulous. All right, so our big update here is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So this law is extending ADA protections to any of your workers who are pregnant. So this applies to reasonable accommodations. So if you have an employee who is pregnant, who is looking for an accommodation, we treat them at this point the same as we would anyone else with a disability coming forward looking for an accommodation. So that involves a careful review of the process, making sure, does that accommodation request cause undue hardship for you and for the business? It needs to be a carefully reviewed process. Denying a request for accommodation can be a really challenging prospect. Next slide. Okay, so who is covered under this new standard? So covered employees, if you were already following ADA rules, you would be covered, and then 15+ employees, this is also going to apply to you. Make sure you have a process for managing accommodation requests as they come in. That might involve proof of need, medical feedback forms, whatever your internal standards are for what is an undue hardship for your business. As I said, accommodations are difficult. They can be nuanced, and some of them, they're easy to implement, right? An extra 5-minute break, that's no problem. Something more substantial like a separate office for someone, that might be a little more difficult. So make sure you have that process in place so that you're prepared when an accommodation comes through. And then next steps for you is make sure that you're either speaking with your attorney or your HR team, so you have that process on the back end, so you're ready for an accommodation request to come through. And then I'll pass it back to Katie here so we can go over some benefits information.
Oh, thank you. Okay, benefits. Why are they important? Not only are they required, as of, recently, a lot of states require you have some sort of benefit program in place. Personally, something to recommend is don't overwhelm yourself. Take it one step at a time. You don't need to have a giant suite of benefits if you have a small business, but it's important that your employees see that you are trying to accommodate them and trying to create a benefit program that is going to be good for them and their family as they continue to grow with your company. This is a great way to keep employees for a longer period of time because they are wanting the benefits. They're wanting to have basic. So medical, dental, vision, those are things that having those in place are the first 3 that we start with, and then you can add on from there. There's certain benefits that you can offer that are pass-throughs. You can do short-term disability, highly recommended short-term disability, long-term disability. Having some sort of investment vehicle, like I mentioned before, is really important. Having something in place, a simple IRA is a great way to get started. And then as you continue to grow, putting in place a 401k would be something that we recommend. Perks are additional add-ons. So clients that we work with, they know that we love adding additional perks. Things like, flexible schedules would be a perk. That's something that we are able to offer to our team. Pet insurance is one that I highly recommend. It is not thought about that often, but everyone has a furry friend, or most people do. And it's really important. They are very expensive. If you have a pet, you know this. So offering pet insurance or something fun that your employees enjoy and something that sets you apart from other companies is something that's great to have in place. All right, Miss Rachel with the updates.
Fabulous. Okay, so starting off with the benefits updates that you'll see in 2024. So if the Affordable Care Act, Healthcare Act does apply to you and what you're offering, that threshold for affordability has changed for this year. So that is now at 8.39% of folks' income. This is a conversation to be had with your broker. Make sure that you're meeting those requirements. The model health insurance marketplace notification. So whether you are offering insurance or you are not, there is a required document that needs to go to employees that lets them know either you are offering insurance or you are not, and provides information about how to apply for benefits on the open marketplace. So that does need to be provided to your employees as well. Flexible spending accounts. The amount that folks are able to contribute there and the amount of carryover has changed from last year to this year. Again, that's a conversation to have with your broker to make sure that you are prepared for any changes there. Okay, next slide. Fabulous. Okay, and then there have also been changes here to retirement plan contributions. So this one is a conversation to have with your accountant. But in terms of HR, be prepared if you're offering any retirement plans for employees to come forward with requests to change their contribution amount. Obviously, this can update and change anytime the employer would like, but with these changes, it would be in many employees' best interest to increase more into their retirement plans. So be prepared for those. Next slide. Okay. So how does this apply to you? If you have the equivalent of 50 full-time employees, or you are getting close to that threshold, then you need to review the health insurance that you are providing to your employees. Full-time equivalent does not necessarily mean you have 50 full-time employees. It can mean you have a mix of full-time and part-time that, in terms of the number of hours that they are doing for you per week, that equals about 50 full-time. So make sure that the insurance you're offering is meeting the minimum standards that are set by the federal government. And yeah, be prepared for any of those contribution changes from employees. And then I'll pass it back to Katie for our last section here.
Okay, employment posters. These are very important. They are required. Employment posters are the law. There are fines associated with not putting these up. There are fines associated with pretty much everything. So making sure that we are compliant with these basics is a great way to show that you are doing the best you possibly can. You need them. It's important information for employees to know. So what is included in here are things like minimum wage, things like some of the acts that we've already reviewed are going to be included on this. They are annually updated. So making sure you have the most up-to-date posters. Something that is a little secret is you don't necessarily need to be buying these posters. You will get phone calls, people selling the posters, sending you updates, things like that. You don't need to sign up for those if you do not want to. They should be available to you at a local workforce office wherever you are located. Something about this is they need to be posted where all employees can see them. If you have a brick and mortar business, having that available in a break room, a lunchroom, something like that up on the bulletin board is where we recommend you have them. If the employees are remote, they need to be sent out with that to that employee. So we include those in our new hire packets. We have that information based on where that employee is located. There are federal laws and there are also state and local laws that are included based on wherever that employee is going to be. So making sure you get that employee access to those posters up front is super important. All right, Rachel with the updates.
Fabulous. All right, so obviously we've got some changes to employment posters here. So the first one we wanted to look at was the Know Your Rights poster, a snippet here on the slide so you know what that poster looks like. The change here is that we have added information from the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act so that folks know that they are protected under that act as well. So if you have not already, that poster needs to be updated. Next slide. And then back again with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So there's been changes to this poster as well. So summary of your rights under the FCRA. That poster has also made a few tiny changes to reflect the overall changes in the act itself. So again, if you have not already, that poster needs to be taken down and replaced. Next slide. Okay, so next steps. Obviously, the two posters that have changed for federal standards, those need to be updated. There are, of course, state changes as well. So review your state requirements with either your HR team or your legal team to make sure that you have all of the required posters, both federally and for each state that you might be in. Make sure they are displayed somewhere that employees can see them easily. That can be a break room is the easiest response to that. If you have all remote employees, then make sure those posters are available in a place that is easy to access. And it's a good idea to have your employees sign off that they have received those posters as well. Okay.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you guys for sitting through this. I know that federal legal updates and compliance are not the most fun. Rachel loves compliance, so that's why I have her involved here. Compliance is something that's important for you to have in place to get to the next level with your company, to allow you to scale, to avoid lawsuits, to avoid fines. So getting all those things in place is really important. A couple questions. So I have a couple questions here that we are going to answer live. So the first one that I have here is, what type of background checks do you recommend? So background checks, again, are very, very important. We require, or we request that, all clients do a basic level background screen for any employee. I understand that, obviously if you have 50 laborers and it's a high turnover job, that maybe a background screen is something that you do not do for that level of employee. However, any employees that are, interacting with your clients, interacting with your customers, going into houses, going into businesses to do their job, any employees that have access to financials, have access to your banks, your credit cards, have a company credit card, anything like that, I would highly recommend. Those I would recommend even a higher level of some sort of background screen to make sure that you are not hiring somebody who, I've had crazy experiences. I've had someone who hired, before we were working with them, someone into a controller position and had not run a background screen on that individual. They then ran a background screen on this individual and saw that they had some finance related charges in their background. So you do not want somebody with high level financial charges in their background, any financial charges in their background, having access to your financials. So that's super important. Okay. How often should the handbook be updated? So the handbook should be updated every year. So what we do is at the end of this year, for example, we will be updating our handbook and our clients' handbooks for the following year. As you can see, there are updates that come out regularly. There are updates that come out throughout the year as well. So if you are not getting HR compliance updates, you definitely want to have some sort of service that allows you to receive those updates. What we do for our clients is we receive those updates on behalf of our clients, and then we update the employee handbook for them. So we send them along so they're aware of those updates that they're happening, but we make sure that in our regular meetings that we talk through them, we let them know how they may impact the next steps for them, and we make sure that they are updated accordingly. Okay. Do we work with benefit providers? We do work with benefit providers. So what we do for small businesses is very centralized, and anything having to do with your employees, you are able to join. And we offer upfront when we onboard a client, a complimentary benefits review, a complimentary payroll review, complimentary OSHA reviews. And the way that we do that is we partner with small businesses that we trust. We do not have skin in the game there. We're not getting paid off to introduce certain companies with certain clients. We really do our research. We've been in business 9 years as of this January. So what we do is we partner with those small businesses and we offer different options for them depending on what their needs look like. So we do partner with benefit providers. Beautiful. Rachel, I'm going to pass this next one here about the posters to you.
Fabulous. So if you're looking for an electronic copy, there's going to be on the federal government's website. The easiest way to find them is go ahead and do a quick Google, honestly, for which poster you're looking for. The federal government's website can be a little bit difficult to navigate. Make sure that the website you end up on ends in .gov to make sure you're grabbing the correct poster, and then check the year that they have published that poster to make sure you're grabbing the right one. If you're looking for in-person posters, then either printing those yourself or going to a workforce office so you can grab those posters.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. So where should we get HR compliance updates from? So there are different services that are available that will give you HR compliance updates. The biggest issue that I see with this is you receive the update, but you kind of forward it around the office. So if you don't have somebody that's in the HR position, making those updates to your handbook, to your policies and things like that, it doesn't matter. Again, it's like having an employee handbook that nobody has signed. So, the HR compliance updates must be added to any sort of policies and processes you have in place, and they must be followed. So just receiving them doesn't really do anything. Again, that's why we do that for our clients on their behalf, is we receive them and we add those into our regular standard meetings with them, alerting them as to what is being updated, things like that. You're also able to apply or sign up on, the federal DOL website will most likely have a compliance update available for you. State sites as well have compliance updates that are available for you. So having a service in place is a lot easier. So you make sure you're really covering your bases there. However, if you want to manage that yourself, there's different systems in different areas online that you can sign up. Just make sure it's from a reputable agency. So signing up to some random law firm that is in a different state or things like that, things that you can't necessarily 100% trust. There's things you can sign up on SHRM. So Society of Human Resources have compliance updates as well. But again, that's something that we can offer to you as well. So if you're interested in learning more about how we provide those to clients, it comes alongside our HR hotline. Beautiful. Benefit analysis. So we work alongside whoever is offering your benefits. If you are working with a broker, we can work with that broker as well to help you do a benefit analysis. Something else is when we provide that complimentary assessment with different benefit providers, we are that centralized person that is helping provide that benefit analysis. So if there are questions or you want to see other options that are out there for benefits, that is something that we can help you, at least direct you in the proper direction as to who you should be speaking to. But we can be doing that as well for you. Beautiful. If there's any other questions, please feel free to add them in. I am really excited. I appreciate all you guys joining today and being here for our kickoff. So we are going to be doing a webinar once a month for the rest of the year. The next one is going to be a lot more fun. So I appreciate you digging through this audit basic compliance stuff with us. But the next one that we are going to be doing is going to be best practices in hiring and management and other HR tips and tricks when it comes to hiring the right person and properly managing your team. We have a QR code here. So if you are interested in receiving all of these updates in a PDF, please feel free to scan this QR code. There's a quick form, name, email, things like that. Submit that form and you will receive an email with the attached PDF. So please feel free to do that. That was one of the questions that came through. If this will be available following, if we'll be able to get this information, you absolutely will. In addition to that, what we would love to do is offer you free HR assessments, free HR conversations. So following that initial, when you download, it should redirect you to a calendar and you're able to pick a time that works for you, and you will have the opportunity to speak with myself, Rachel, somebody on the CYB team, and have that any answers, any burning questions that you currently have that were not answered or touched on today, please feel free, book that time. We would love to speak with you and have a quick conversation. Anything that's going on, not only federal compliance, anything HR related, we just love to chat. So please feel free. Again, this information will be available to you after this call. We will also send out the QR code in addition to the availability following this call. Anything else? Rachel, would you like to add anything else?
No, just thank you all so much for your time this morning.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We hope you join us for our next one. Again, it's going to be a lot more fun, and we would love to have you there. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.